So we want to thank everybody so much for being here today. This is the Living Wage for Wisconsin Living Wage Coalition. We want to thank our partner organizations, of course, Milwaukee Area Service and Hospitality Workers, Citizen Action of Wisconsin, Northside Rising, thank you for being here as well, our Wisconsin Revolution, and Working Families Party Wisconsin, as well as the UAW. This is a lot more, this is a lot deeper, this is a lot more complex than just minimum wage, right? This conversation is built around the belief that wages and labor are inherently leverage against the capitalist system and the ownership class that control every aspect of our lives. We are fighting to bring some of the power back to the working class, of course, being the engines of economic productivity. The working class are the backbone of our communities. We are the ones who are doing all of the work at the ground level. We are the ones who are moving growing the food that is serving at our tables. We are the ones who are building the buildings and the roads and the infrastructure that we all utilize day in and day out. And we should be receiving the fruits of our labor to a much greater extent than we're seeing today. We, of course, see the reverse funnel, as we like to call it, of wealth continuing to flow up and up and up. The wealthiest keep getting wealthier, the rich keep getting richer, and the rest of us fall further and further behind, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. Now, Peter's going to dive into the numbers to kind of showcase just how extreme this division has become, and just how much has been taken from us, despite the fact that, again, we are the ones that are putting in the work every single day. We are the ones who are generating productivity, and we are the ones. We are the most skilled and most educated workforce in American history. We're the most skilled and educated workforce in the world, in the wealthiest country in the history of our species. Yet, for too many people, daily life is a struggle. We're falling further and further behind as affordability crisis continues to hit us. And we're hoping to change that, and we're hoping to use the power of our collective organizing, the only advantage that we have over the rich and powerful, of course, being our numbers. We're never going to out-network them. We're never going to out-fundraise them. It's impossible. Mathematically, 6 men hold more wealth than the bottom 50% of Americans combined. But we can out-organize them, and we can outwork them, because we outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1. Don't ever forget that. That is our strength. That is our advantage. We're going to continue utilizing that, and we're going to do it through multiple fronts. We're going to have public education events such as today, where we're going to bring in experts in the field to talk about the history of labor, the history of organized labor, the amenities and benefits that have been fought for and won by our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. And we're also going to then use this pressure that our numbers give us, the leverage that our numbers give us, and the power that we have in solidarity with one another, to pressure elected officials to win elections and to get them behind this project, the Living Wage 20 for 26 political economy of work and wages effort. So with that, I want to thank everyone so much for being here, and I want to invite up to the stage Mr. Peter Rickman.
I think there's first.
Who's next?
Troy.
Yvette. Okay.
We got Troy.
So,
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Kivette. I've been a member of Northside Rising for going on 4.5 years. I did a lot of volunteer work outside of working and going to school. I believe $20 an hour can make a real difference for a lot of working people. It can give families a little more breathing room and help people get closer to being financially stable. But honestly, I don't think the cost of living stops at $20 an hour. I believe 20 should be the start, not the finish. We're paying rent, we're paying utilities, we're paying car insurance, gas, maintenance, registration fees, groceries, health care, child care, and everything else that comes with simply trying to live.
Let's go.
And I can speak from personal experience. I've worked 2 jobs trying to make ends meet. One paying $17 an hour and another paying $20 an hour. One paying $17 an hour and another paying $10 an hour. If I was struggling while working 2 jobs, just imagine the families trying to survive on $7, $8, and $9 an hour. How are we supposed to pay our bills? How are we supposed to save? How are we supposed to handle an emergency? How are they supposed to care for their children and still have enough over to take care of themselves? A convenient living wage should allow somebody to work, pay their bills, take care of their family, save some money, handle an unexpected emergency, and still have enough left over to actually enjoy their life. Because working shouldn't mean you're constantly choosing which bill you're going to pay this month. And this isn't just about money. When people aren't constantly struggling just to survive, we will have and be able to create a healthy society. So that's why I vote for $20 a wage.
Y'all forgive me. Good evening. Good to see some of y'all that I've seen before. I'm not a Baptist preacher. I'm not a used car salesman. I'm not a defense attorney, so forgive me about being up in front of people. My name is Troy Brewer. I'm 56 years old and a homeowner on the north side of Milwaukee. I worked in the food service and hospitality industry for over 35 years. I'm currently employed at the Pfizer Forum as a lead cook, also a member officer of MASH. I'm here today to talk about a living wage bill that MASH, along with several other organizations, are a part of a coalition to get this bill passed. I stand before you today still trying to comprehend how politicians and legislators have failed the working class people of Wisconsin for over 2 decades. I stand before you today not just baffled, but angry now. I'm like fed up as to why people were voted into these positions, think that $7.50, $15, or even $20 an hour is enough to feed, clothe, and shelter one person, not alone, a family. I stand before you today on behalf of my community, over the 1,500 members of MASH and the coalition that we're a part of. I stand before you today to fight for this living bill that we're not trying to pass, we're going to pass, and it will do so much for everyone in our state. The bill being passed means that maybe we can afford to live. Living has skyrocketed in the state of Wisconsin, and don't get me started on wheat energies, the cost of groceries, the price of gasoline, the price of health care, and that's going through the roof. This living wage bill of $20 an hour is the floor, not the ceiling. It's time that people stand up and do something about the crime that has been committed against the working class people of our state for over 2 decades. Some of you have public office positions for just as long as the crime has been committed against us. We have an upcoming election, and you guys will have a chance to do exactly that. I can talk till I'm blue in my face about the subject, and now it's just turned to anger. Platforms and panels like this allow people to speak and really stand up for how they feel, and I think that the points that I'm making have been falling on deaf ears. We have what we call in our office a safe space. Y'all forgive me for this. It's open air, and people say what they really want to say and not be judged by it. Black and brown people in the city of Milwaukee live in some of the most poorest, impoverished neighborhoods in the country, not alone just the state. And this bill will change a lot of things that black and brown people need help on, and it's not just us, it'll change stuff for other people as well. I'm fortunate enough to have a union job and have rights that protect us and pay us a decent wage, but the sad part is that some of the people I even work with are homeless. And most of them, if not all, have lost hope and faith in politics and government. I'm tired of hearing, when we get the majority, we're gonna change things, we're gonna pass this, we're gonna pass that. I'm tired of politicians warring against each other. I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, I'm independent. Just get together and do what's right by the Wisconsinites. It's time for them to stand up and do what's right by all people of Wisconsin. I know I'm getting winded and I don't like standing up in front of everybody. So I haven't even touched on all, but this is definitely a great start to something that will benefit everyone in the state of Wisconsin. So politicians or government officials, if you in here, stop the lip service and do something about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, I know that people in this room, there are stories all over this city, all over this state, and all over this room of individuals who would be immensely impacted by this legislation. But we can't get this legislation through if we're not pressuring the politicians in office currently, and if we're not getting elected officials into positions where they can do something about it. That's where this pressure campaign is really built up, going back about what, Peter, 12, 18 months now that we've been working on this. We've been meeting with officials all across the state. We have some tremendous officials who are signed on and who have written this legislation. And I do want to apologize on behalf of Senator Dora Drake, who was supposed to be our special guest here out of a precautionary measure. She is out of commission for about 24 hours with a health-related issue. But she wanted to thank everybody so much for being here and let you know that this is near and dear to her heart as well. And this is something that she believes we can only accomplish when we stand up and fight together, which is why we are going to continue to utilize our collective strength and stand in solidarity with one another. So I would like to welcome to the stage now, I believe, Mr. Peter Rickman.
Great. All right. So, this podium is not going to make it through the night with all the people up here banging away, slamming around. So if a bolt falls out,
It's taped together.
that's generous. This is a pretty damn good looking room here tonight, full of people who believe that all labor has dignity. And no matter who you are, or what you do, or where you bring home your paycheck, you deserve to make a wage you can live on. But for decades here, this basic moral proposition that underpins a fair economy and a decent society has been undermined by the reality that wages have stagnated, even fallen behind. Today, here in Wisconsin, 1/3 of working class people punch a clock only to bring home a paycheck of less than $20 an hour. Now that's not even taking the inflation-adjusted demand of the fight for 15, which I know many people in this room have been a part of. If we did that, it'd be $22 an hour today. Now you see, MIT researchers have determined that $20 an hour is the bare minimum just a single adult needs to get by in each of the 72 counties of Wisconsin. Here in Milwaukee County, it's over $21 an hour. 800,000 people in our neighborhoods, in our communities, all across the state of Wisconsin, make less than a bare subsistence living wage in the richest country in the history of the world. 1 out of every 3 of us, and that holds back all of us. Now, Wisconsin used to be a high-wage state, when half the working class punched a clock in factories and foundries, building autos and agricultural equipment, working in packing houses and paper plants, when half of us were employed in jobs in industries where union density was near universal. Wisconsin was a high-wage state, and we helped give birth to the world's first mass middle class. But those jobs are gone, thanks to NAFTA and the WTO and financialization, monopolization. And unfortunately, they're not coming back. Just look around this neighborhood. By the way, if you go a couple blocks up this way, there's the site of an old American Motors Company plant that used to employ over 6,000 people in good living wage union jobs. And today it's a Walmart. That's what's going on in our economy. Now these jobs have been replaced by an explosion of low wage, no benefit, no rights, no respect, non-union jobs in the service sector. It's bartenders, baristas, cooks and CNAs, hotel housekeepers, home health aides, Walmart workers, warehouse pickers at Amazon. 7 of the 10 fastest growing jobs in Wisconsin today pay less than a living wage. 14 of the 20 fastest growing jobs. We're a low wage state in a low wage nation. Now, as Troy said, there's nothing wrong with this work. In fact, it's essential. And the truth is, these are the jobs that exist and will be here. What's wrong are the wages the bosses are getting away with paying us. Now, we don't miss the jobs that we've lost so much as we miss the pay and the benefits, middle-class living standards, the American dream. And if we don't organize and fight, that ain't coming back either. We are getting screwed. And those at the top are taking it from us. Today, the share of national income returning to labor, to worker wages, has never been lower. It's 1/5 below what it was in the 4 decades when we gave birth to the world's first mass middle class and started bringing everybody along into that. And William said it, there ain't nothing wrong with us. We're the most skilled, educated, and productive workforce in the history of these United States. But at the very same time, the share of national income that returns to capital, to corporate profits, has never been higher. In fact, it's 2.5 times larger than it was during the heyday of our shared prosperity economy. So labor share of income down 20%. Corporate profits as a share of our economy up 2.5 times, setting record levels every single year. Wages stagnant, living standards eroded, middle class decimated, wealth and income inequality skyrocketed. This did not happen here, though, by accident. This wasn't some sort of magic trick. These lines that split apart on this graph, that's not coincidence. This is causal. This is a story of economic power. It's a story of labor market bargaining power. And it's a story of political economy. It's a tale of 2 political economies, in fact, of the New Deal order and the neoliberal order. So let me take you back here. From the transition out of the Gilded Age of the 1920s that brought on the Great Depression, on the eve of the New Deal. This was a time of laissez-faire political economy and robber barons, the money power and the monopoly power and control, labor smashed, living standards for working people crushed under the weight of tremendous wealth and income inequality, the likes of which we had never seen in this nation. Sound familiar here? But at that time, a burst of working class populist reforms sprung forth, demanded an unrigging of the system to govern our political economy on behalf of the common man and woman, for the common good. And folks like us, in rooms just like this, forged a new deal, focused foursquare on economic power. Folks like us organized in our workplaces, took to the streets and to the ballot box and to the halls of government. And we won the fight to define a nation not around corporatism or wealth at the top, but for progressive populism, where the people shall rule. Now, the framers of the New Deal that we put into office made a deliberate choice to organize our political economy around economic power for ordinary people, around folks like us. And they sought to balance the power in labor markets between the boss class and the working class, so that as the economy grew, that wealth that we create with our hands ended up right back in our pockets, in our paychecks. And while these New Dealers governed with a comprehensive program on economic power, like breaking up the big banks and taking on Wall Street, busting up monopolies, these New Dealers recognized the primacy and priority of labor markets. They did that not just for the purposes of constructing and managing a political economy, but also to restore our republic from one of corporate domination to one of popular democracy. You see, the labor market is the only one where the commodity happens to be human beings, our time, our talent, our lives. It's the one market where sellers have to be there, because we as working people have to sell our labor to survive. So these New Deal policymakers understood that at that time, employers had all the power and they could name their price, poverty wages. So don't let economists, gobbledygook, or some dweeb with a textbook insist that, well, Econ 101 says this, that, or the other nonsensical thing. Prices are political, not natural phenomenon, and that includes the price of labor. Yes, it's about the law of supply and the law of demand, but prices and wages are a function of who has power in our markets. So the most important thing that policymakers can do, the most important thing they have done and will do, if we make them, is to decide how to construct markets and to determine who has power. So that's what these New Dealers did. They legislated, governed, and acted to balance power in the labor market through twin policies that gave rise to the middle class and to the most dynamic and prosperous economy on the face of the planet that shared its fruits with those who produced them, the working class. So first, New Dealers declared and legislated that the policy of this United States is to foster and promote collective bargaining as a fundamental good. So millions of workers unionized in basic industries and beyond. For 4 decades, nearly half of all working people benefited from union contracts. But second, New Deal policymakers established a rising floor on the labor market to bring everyone else along with those gains from union contracts, the minimum wage. FDR himself and the architects of the minimum wage, inspired by the La Follette progressive populists right here in Wisconsin, who enshrined in our state's laws, by the way, and I quote, "The minimum wage shall be not less than a living wage." They intended it to be a wage that you could make a living on, and for minimum wage to shape market outcomes for all working people. So for decades, they designed and managed minimum wage in relationship to median wages, those at the middle, and productivity growth. So unions won higher pay and set the standard, and the minimum wage kept on rising to bring the whole of the labor market along. Productivity, output, and wealth increased, and labor, we took our share. For 40 years, we made sure that workers had economic power in the labor market, and we made work pay. The middle class grew, our shared prosperity economy boomed. But in the 1970s, the economic royalists, the big banks and the boss class, Wall Street, the 1%, they got together. Maybe in rooms kind of like this, but probably a hell of a lot fancier, and maybe a little bit better food as they came in. They decided they were done with constraints on their economic power. And they broke through in the political arena because too many Democratic Party politicians abandoned the playing field of political economy. Some outright switched teams. The Democratic Party lost its populist soul, foregoing that governing analysis and vision focused on economic power for ordinary people. Without a populist Democratic Party standing in their way, the bosses and the financier class, they rigged the system to funnel that wealth that working people create away from our wages and into corporate profits. So how'd they do it? First, they gutted labor laws and stopped reform. Starting in the Carter administration, every single president in Congress, Democrat and Republican alike, has failed to modernize our labor laws. Our labor laws were written closer to the Civil War than they were to today. And those politicians let activist judges and anti-union bureaucrats eviscerate the intent and effect of our labor laws that said unions are good for all working people and the health and welfare of the entirety of our nation. Today, labor law is arguably worse for private sector workers than in the time before the New Deal that legalized unions. So it's no wonder that organized labor represents only 10% of workers today, 6% in the private sector. Numbers that look a lot like that Gilded Age of the 1920s. But if you can actually believe it, they're worse today. Unions are weaker today than they were in the Gilded Age. Damn right. Yeah. Second, politicians carrying the water for those plutocrats all but ended the minimum wage. They stopped adjusting it as a policy of economic power that impacted all workers, transforming it into all that we've known it for the last 50 years, a poverty wage with virtually no impact but for the very bottom of the labor market. Those policymakers abandoned the original intent of the minimum wage, its historical, practical, effective role in the labor market and our political economy. So it's not that, you hear it, it's been 17 years since the minimum wage has gone up. Well, the truth is, it's been since the early 1970s, since the minimum wage has set a floor that impacted the market for all workers and played that role in establishing an economy of shared prosperity. And I hear people say, $7.25, that's not enough. But you know what? 12 isn't enough either. $15 is not enough.
It is not.
And people are talking about these numbers as if we have a real minimum wage. The reality is it might as well be zero because it doesn't impact the power that you or you or you or you or anyone has in the labor market. That princely sum of $7.25. It's a joke.
Sure is.
Had policymakers, by the way, kept up the relationship of minimum wage to median wage the way that it was for those 4 decades, how much do you think it would be today? Go ahead.
I did some research and it says $32.15 an hour.
ChatGPT strikes again. Unfortunately, it'd be $21 an hour today. Now, had minimum wage kept up with the growth of productivity in our economy, it would be about $26, $27, maybe $28 an hour today. So in this story, at the conclusion, we recognize that without the laws and policies to uphold labor market power for workers on the books, all the productivity growth, all the economic expansion in the world wouldn't lead to higher wages. It couldn't, it wouldn't, it didn't, because bosses have had all the power to capture those gains that working people have contributed to our economy. Researchers at the Rand Corporation, not exactly some radical anti-capitalist outfit, they ran the numbers on the impact of this dramatic shift in bargaining power away from workers and into the hands of the bosses. They found that this shift, this abandonment of the New Deal political economy, cost us $79 trillion in lost income. $79 trillion with a T and 12 zeros. That number is so large, it is quite literally unfathomable. So let me make it plain for you all. That comes out to $28,000 per year per worker. So how different would your life be with $28,000 more per year? Would you struggle with rent, buying a home, paying property taxes? Would trips to the grocery store checkout line get a little bit easier? Would you struggle with that We Energies bill or the price of gas? Could your $28,000 a year raise mean that you could afford to save for retirement, take your family on vacation, miss a day of work when you're sick, or otherwise live a more decent and dignified life? They've taken it from us, bosses and politicians, and we've let that. Let me ask you this. After all this is done and over with tonight, we clean up the pizza, we get these chairs set back up, I follow you back to your house, and I walk in the door behind you. Go up to where your wallet is, open it up, and take out $538. How far out the door would I get before you put an end to that? Usually somebody pops up and says one of two things. One, where the hell did you find $538 in my wallet? Or the alternative version is something about beating my ass and leaving me out in the street. Well, here's the unfortunate reality. That is what we have been letting them do. Every week, every paycheck, every month, every year, for the entirety of our working lives. But we're not going to let them get away with that anymore. We're not going to let them get away with this generational theft, this extraction of wealth and resources taken from the working class, funneled upwards to the boss class. Not anymore. We are going to take it back, starting with the living wage for all who work here in Wisconsin. That $28,000 a year, that comes down to $13.46 per hour. We're going to take that, put it on top of $7.25 an hour, and guarantee a living wage for every single working man and woman here in Wisconsin. And we know the objections that they are going to raise to restoring the minimum wage to a living wage, to its rightful place as a pillar of labor market bargaining power. Who here has heard the one about, oh, raising wages, that's going to kill jobs? You know that one?
Small businesses, yeah.
Well, the truth is, as early as the mid-1990s, the economists who don't just stare up into space theorizing, doing calculus and calling it a science, the folks who work with actual data on what's been going on, found that every time minimum wage gone up, no matter where you look, it had no adverse impact on employment. And when the living wage movement, some of us here have been a big part of that, when we started turning towards organizing around large wage increases, like when Seattle and New York more than doubled the minimum wage to $15 an hour well over a decade ago, or when California raised the floor for food service workers to $20 an hour a couple years back, those economists kept on finding every single credible study found no adverse impact on employment. Even in the sectors of the economy who were impacted by it saw no loss of jobs. It turns out that when working people make more money, what do? We ain't stashing it in the Cayman Islands bank account. We're not gambling it on the Wall Street casino. We spend it, and that multiplies throughout the economy.
And we spend it in our communities as well.
That's right. We spend it in our communities, taking care of one another, buying from those small businesses. Now, if I have to hear one more person say, oh, Peter, raising wages, that's going to raise prices. Or, oh, raising wages, that's going to cause inflation. I'm going to lose my lunch or lose my mind. This is insane. So let me just give you a quick statistic on this. It's intended to help illustrate things, not because I think you're going to walk out of here quoting all these things to your friends, family, neighbors. Researchers find that for every 10% increase in the wage floor, prices in the industries that are impacted by it rise by only 0.5%. So raise the wage 10%, a $10 item goes up to $10.05, maybe $10.10. It's literally nickels and dimes while they're gambling with our lives here and our inability to make a decent living on the work that we do. Do a little bit of math here with me. Raise the floor by 1/3 over its current market rate of about $14, $15 an hour. Raise it to $20 an hour. Do a little math with me. That means that $10 item would go up to, oh my God, $10.15. Not exactly the stuff of 8 to 10% year-over-year inflation, or the exploding cost of housing and healthcare and food and energy, the costs that have been eating up the bulk of working people's budgets and sending us further and further behind. Now, the last time that we had inflation like we've seen over the last few years, it may have been true that wages and prices rose together. In the late 1970s, the last time we had severe sustained inflation, workers still had bargaining power. So when prices went up due to a supply shock, workers could demand higher wages. And it did set off a wage price spiral. That's true. But that was then, and this is now. Workers haven't had bargaining power for decades, nor have we gotten large wage increases. The truth is, prices have gone up since 2021, a lot. And they keep on going up. And it ain't because you got a $13.46 per hour raise, is it? This has been, surprise, surprise, a story of economic power, market power. Virtually every single industry has become so concentrated that our markets are more consolidated and monopolized than even in the era of the great trusts of Mellon and Morgan and DuPont and Rockefeller that we learned about in our history books. We're living through history here today. Now, prices, you remember, are a function of market power. So monopolies today have so much power that they are what's driving the price increases. That's why you are feeling the pain of inflation. If raising prices or paying lower wages leads to greater profit for a corporation, and they have the power to do that, that's exactly what they're going to do. That's exactly what they have done. Pay us lower wages and raise prices ever higher. Now, in 1980, firms, on average, set prices about 20% above their marginal cost to produce goods and services. Today, that figure is over 60%. And it's all gone to corporate profits. Not a dime of that has ended up in higher pay for working people. So I'm sure you're asking the question, how did we end up like this? How did we end up with monopoly power dominating? Well, it's the same way that we've ended up without economic power for working people in the labor market. Politicians doing the bidding of big business stopped enforcing our antitrust laws, from Carter to Reagan to Bush to Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump. And they allowed activist judges and bureaucrats to shred our anti-monopoly tradition. And politicians doing the bidding of Wall Street, Democrats and Republicans together, they deregulated the banks and allowed them to consolidate. They have unleashed the greatest concentration of the money power and monopoly power, not only in American history, but in world history. So these monopolies driving price increases. And our inadequate wages and household income are basically the same problem with the same cause. Economic power tilted against us, determined by the governance of our political economy, chosen by our elected policymakers. So who has market power, and who should have market power? Bosses? Big banks? Wall Street? Monopolies?
People.
The people, working people, producers, citizens. The question here is what direction our political leaders will choose, and what direction we, the people, will choose. We've had the greatest natural experiment in the history of the world to make our choice. After 4 decades of a New Deal political economy organized around economic power for the people, that made work pay, that gave rise to the first mass middle class in history, that produced a shared prosperity economy, the envy of the world. We've had 4 decades of the neoliberal order that put that economic power back in the hands of the boss class and corporate titans. Wages stagnant, living standards eroded, middle class decimated, corporate profits higher than ever, robber barons richer than ever, the greatest wealth and income inequality of all time, worse than the Gilded Age that brought on the Great Depression.
Worse than the French Revolution.
Also true. Thank you, ChatGPT, on that. So which do you choose, and which will we choose in our democratic republic? Critically, the question is, what will our political leaders choose? And who will we choose to lead us? Those who will attack this income inequality economy, this decimation of worker power, this destruction of the middle class, those who will attack it with every fiber of their being, or those who will wave the boss class along, matadors to these bulls of big corporate power. This is about market power. This is about economic power, but this is about popular power in our democracy. What we do, how we organize, how we impact our politicians, who those politicians are. Raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour tomorrow, and half of working people in our state will get a raise. Half of us. Now, I'm no politician, but I think that raising half of people's pay would make for damn fine politics. At a time of a cost of living crisis, where these state politicians can do precious little about the cost side of household budgets, there's one thing they can do about the revenue side of household budgets to take the pressure off of us, and that's raising wages. And it turns out the people are with us. Raising the minimum wage has been a 2-to-1 issue in public opinion polling for well over a decade. Don't think that folks don't agree with us. Now, it used to be something more like 50% were for it, 35% were against it, when people were talking about, $10, $12 an hour. Those public opinion numbers would actually fall off when folks were talking about something more like, $15 an hour. And the reality is people supported doing nice things for poor people, but didn't think those people deserve too much. And that's all too many have known minimum wage to be for 5 decades. It's about those left behind, those at the bottom of the labor market, not all of us. Minimum wage was like some other means-tested tax and transfer program. Do-gooder liberalism, generally like supported in theory, but not politicized into practice, not part of a program to transform our political economy. But sometime here after Occupy Wall Street, sometime during the fight for 15, many of you were there, when we named the income inequality economy as a crisis that impacted the lives of all working people. Sometime around when Bernie Sanders took off and an upsurge of working class populism started taking to the streets, to the ballot box, and the halls of government, demanding a new kind of politics focused on economic power for working people. Something changed when all that happened. The higher wage numbers went in public opinion polling. Support didn't actually fall off. In fact, it started going up. And raising wages dramatically became a super majority issue. People started seeing it as a policy for us, for all of us, not somebody else. And that's why we're not calling for a little boost for some people. We're here today demanding a living wage for all working people. We're not saying we don't want some tax and transfer program. We're not saying we want a handout to compensate the losers in markets. We're telling you that we demand an unrigged system where we can make our way with the dignity of work, that Midwestern grit that defines us, blue collar and pink collar, white collar, no collar. We're talking about transforming entirely the income inequality economy that holds us all back. The producing people of America, the real makers. We're not letting this be something where the takers keep on grabbing from us the wealth that we create. People support raising wages dramatically and restoring worker power. 70% support unions. 2/3 of us want corporations to have less power and working people to have more power. And why is that? It's because they see these policies that we're talking about, the supermajority, the working class supermajority across this country, they see it as part of a populist program of economic power that's going to raise up all of us and rewrite a new deal for us in the 21st century, rebuild a middle-class society that brings all of us along. So let me close out here by saying the politicians and the parties that want to win Wisconsin, win a governor's race this year, maybe 50 seats in the Assembly, 17 in the Senate, maybe win a United States Senate seat in 2028, they will grab onto this populist upsurge that's out there in urban and rural areas alike. And they'll articulate this argument, this analysis, this vision, credibly, coherently, and clearly. They'll say, it's time to have a working class populist program governing our economy, taking on economic power like the bosses and the big banks to deliver for the working class supermajority, focused on living wages and legalizing unions. These politicians and these parties, they'll stand with us, people in rooms like this all across Wisconsin, the hundreds of thousands of working people who want, who need, and demand a raise. If we build this populist movement, they will come. If we build this movement for living wages and worker power, they will join us in the streets, at the ballot box, and the halls of government. And I believe that we will win. It is time to make work pay again. It's time to rebuild this political economy. It's time to rebuild a middle-class New Deal society. It's time for us to organize, fight, and win 20 for 26 and beyond. I believe that we will win, and I carry the confidence, as I believe that you do too. If you've come here tonight, you know that just as we have fought and beaten the big banks and the boss class and Wall Street and the 1% once before, if we build and mobilize this movement for working class populism, we can and we will do it again. I believe that we will win. The people are with us here. The folks who've kept the faith, the folks relighting the torches, maybe grabbing a pitchfork or two. So we got to agitate, we got to educate, we got to organize and mobilize. We got to make this the demand that cannot be ignored and cannot be denied in the halls of power. No matter who's hearing it, we will be there demanding a living wage for all of working Wisconsin. So it is time to head on out and evangelize your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers. Tell them the good news. Get them singing in our choir. We're going to raise up a righteous army, a living wage, legalize unions, voters, ready to march on the ballot box come November, ready to march in the halls of government come January. We're going to spread the good news of good old-fashioned boss fighting, break up the big banks, take on Wall Street, bust up these monopolies, bring back the unions, make work pay again, working class populism. I believe that we will win. So grab your pitchforks, sisters and brothers, pick up those torches. Let's get ready to march. Let's get ready to fight. Let's get ready to organize, and we will win. I believe that we will win. Now that was just a that was a long filibuster to introduce our next guest here. I was just waiting for him to come on over from Madison. Because while State Senator Dora Drake, by the way, the lead co-sponsor of comprehensive living wage legislation, could not make it, we have an esteemed guest. Would you like to come on up here, Nick Truog, leader of Wisconsin's Democratic Party Black Caucus? So here's what we're going to do. Nick is going to talk a little bit about what's going on with comprehensive living wage legislation. And then what we're going to do is take some questions, get a little bit of discussion on what I outlined here and what is bringing us together in this room tonight. How we organize, fight, and win 20 for 26 and beyond. And then we are going to walk out of here tonight with a plan to do exactly what I said. Bring the good news of good old-fashioned working class populism to the people of the state so we mobilize that movement and we win. With that, Nick, come on up here. Let's give you the floor, and then we're going to organize together.
Yo, can we give Peter Rickman a round of applause? How many of you have been so fired up every time? Like, I'm ready to run through a brick wall for us. But, I do want to, specify, I'm here. I am the chair for Wisconsin Black Democrats, but I am here in my official capacity as a communications advocacy director for Senator Dora Drake, who I'm just going to say when we went back and we first met about this, I think the first thing that Peter Rickman and other partners in this group, our Wisconsin Revolution, the Living Wage Coalition, Citizen Action Northside Rising, MASH, and so many others, is are Democrats going to show up and make sure that more money is actually going into people's pockets instead of relying on big business, big corporations to make sure they're actually paying workers a living wage? And I remember I was telling Rick, hey, you don't need to, Senator was like, you don't need to argue with me about it. I'm already there. So when this bill came across, it was a no-brainer that $20 an hour needs to be a living wage. And Senator Drake really wanted to be here with y'all tonight. We were talking to Will and so many others about, hey, we want to make sure we do something in the district on this. But in case you don't know, Senator Dora Drake is expecting. So, some things came up for her. So she really wants to be here with you all. So she became the co-author of the living wage bill because $15 an hour isn't enough. We have not raised the minimum wage 17 years ago, and it needs to change. And a lot of times you'll hear, and Peter was talking about it, and I was looking at it when I came in, was just like a lot of people want to tell you, just like in the Fight for 15, well, it's not realistic. How do we get there? Everyone always wants to talk about why we can't get somewhere, but this is how we get there. And that is why I believe the vast majority of Democrats in the Assembly have been are co-sponsoring this bill, and Senator Drake is one of a handful of senators in the Senate to do it. So I wanted to talk to you all about what is this bill, how does this bill work in the practice, and how are we actually, as a coalition, addressing the concerns that folks do have. So if you ever want to look it up, it's right now for this session, it's Senate Bill 1123. And what this would do is it would increase the state's minimum wage, and it would also restore local government's ability to set higher minimum wages based on the needs of their community. So no longer will Madison or Washington, D.C. tell you how much the minimum wage can be. It is the people and your representatives who decide. And Milwaukee could decide it. Beloit could decide it. Racine could decide it as well. And as we look into the next legislative session, this is going to be a priority for Senator Drake and others. This isn't an election year type of gimmick where we want to sign on. Senator Drake means business and everyone who is a co-sponsor of this bill. So the first thing that it would do if this bill were passed day one is it would make the minimum wage in Wisconsin $15 an hour right away. But then what it does is it gradually increases it by to $20 per hour by 2030. So by 2030, we will be at $20 an hour minimum wage.
What is significant about this bill that gets in the weeds of it is we know the cost of living always still rises. So what we learned with 725 is government passed it, government started to not do its job, and we've been falling behind. So after this is passed, the new minimum wage will be indexed to inflation. So as inflation goes up, so will the minimum wage. So it makes sure that when your grocery store or all these businesses want to increase your prices so you have to pay more, they also have to take into account the wages that they have to make sure they're paying labor to do. The other thing it basically does is for the tipped minimum workers, tipped minimum wage workers, it also does it for them as well to get them up to about $10 an hour in total. I forgot the number in front of me. But I want to emphasize why it's really important this legislation does not leave out tipped workers. You know, I'm gonna be honest, government doesn't pay you a lot of money. So when you work for the government, you're doing it out of love for your community. So like I'm doing this out of love and just like service to all of you. So like sometimes I do GoPuff, I do DoorDash, and so like I am a gig worker. And the one thing I know, how many of you do gig work in here? How many of you have DoorDash, did GoPuff? Anyone? So I just saw a couple people, but one thing that's really frustrating about it, and I'll use GoPuff for example, because I like GoPuff, so I'll use GoPuff and then I'll be able to go, is if I don't get a tip, I'm not making money off that delivery. I get paid $2. I remember I did 2 deliveries, and from that I didn't get any tips because shit's expensive. People can't expect a tip, and then all of a sudden I'm only having $3 for those 2 hours. That doesn't cover my gas. That doesn't cover wear and tear on my vehicle. So we are also in a society right now where people are incentivizing like tipped workers. And it's like, oh, you get a good working style. You're able to get that flexibility, all those things. But in a way, it's just a way to screw workers over. All of us are struggling to pay for gas right now.
So why don't they just get away from tipping and just give people a wage?
I'm with you. But that is the problem we deal with, right? So that is why it's very important why we are also, like this bill is also increasing the minimum wage for tipped workers because it shouldn't be a reliance on tips. A tip is a word for you doing a good job. That shouldn't mean that your employer should pay you less. And also it's really important we do this is so these gig workers, when people are struggling to find these jobs that provide flexibility for their families and everything, they're actually getting paid fairly. So that is like the very big emphasis on the tipped worker part. The other thing with it is that will always be addressed when you hear about the minimum wages. Well, it's going to hurt small businesses. It's going to hurt your small mom and pop shops. It's going to hurt your supper clubs out in western and northern Wisconsin. These folks are going to struggle. And like, I think when the senator and I were talking about this, and Senator Drake is just like, Walmart doesn't need time to pay people more. They can do it right now. Target doesn't, McDonald's doesn't, DoorDash doesn't. DoorDash can pay people a lot more right now.
Walmart had $22 billion in profits last year alone.
And also, did you know the number one, everyone talks about how you have to work in order to receive benefits. That's what the Republicans want to do. Do you know who the number one employer is who has its workers on Medicaid and food and SNAP benefits and Walmart. So these folks can't pay people a living wage, and that's the piece. But it's really important just for us as our goal. The senator's main goal is make sure this gets passed and that these systems are in place. So what this would do is it would create a mechanism where if you are an employer with less than 50 employees, you will have a scale ramp up. You'll have a couple additional extra years to get to $20 an hour. But after that, you need to be at $20 an hour. I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Do you agree? That's more than reasonable enough. So like local businesses, whether you're here, we're here at, what's the name of this place? Kumba. If you're here at Kumba, that gives employers like Kumba more time. That gets your nonprofits who are just like doing mentorship programs more time. And it gets everyone more time. But the biggest thing I just want to emphasize, because that's like the general concept of the legislation, just like really simplified, is that most of the people, there's 1 million people in this state who are making less than $20 an hour. They're your teachers. They're your childcare workers. They're your hospitality workers. They're everyone that makes sure that you are healthy. Like a lot, even some EMT workers. These are people who are meant to keep us healthy and safe and make sure after you work hard and you go and you just want to enjoy a meal with your family, whether that's at, I don't know, whether that's Applebee's. I don't go to Applebee's anymore, but Chili's or whatever. Like, you want to make sure you enjoy yourself. So we got to make sure, like Senator Drake wants to make sure those folks are paid for as well, because it's all very important. But that is the general concept of this legislation. And I want to say this, because I don't think I'll be able to count this as government time anymore, is that the pressure always needs to stay up. This is very important. Senator Drake has been elected in this position since 2020, so for about 6 years. And the reason she wanted to run for office is she wanted to make sure she was making a difference and making the changes within these communities. And accountability is very important. But y'all, it is hard. How do I say this? Because y'all are recording me. I'm gonna say Senator Drake and others are tired of Republican Republicans. Tired of having to tell constituents, I authored this bill, I introduced this bill, I pushed this bill, but we don't have the votes to get through. It is very important when you leave this room and you organize and you're deciding who you are voting for, is who is a governing majority who is going to support a living wage. Are they going to be supporting $20 an hour? Because there are a lot of Democrats that do. There's a lot of legislators that do. And they need to be supported, and we need to send them with the governing authority to do that. And when you're also doing your research on the general race for governor, look at who supports it. There's only one candidate that does. So this is really possible. And we need to make sure that we're holding them accountable, but we're sending people there with a governing majority to do so. So I want to end by taking any questions, but I want to make sure when we're doing that call to action, Senator Drake needs help. You know, not every senator is like on board with this, but with the movement that y'all are doing, we are going to get it across the finish line. And we're so grateful that Peter Rickman with MASH, Northside Rising, our Wisconsin Revolution, so many of y'all are here to like do that. But if folks have any questions, and also, yeah, that's pretty much it. Is there anything you need me to cover on the bill?
Thanks to Nick. All right.